Mike Vacanti.
What's up, brother?
Dude, welcome not only to the podcast, welcome back to the podcast, but welcome to the first ever video podcast that we're doing on the Jordan Syatt podcast. It's on, I think the video is definitely on YouTube, if anyone's watching on YouTube. And then also, I think Spotify has video. But either way, I'm excited to have you on, man.
I'm honored to be the first guest.
I'm actually a little nervous, and which is crazy.
I'm 5% nervous too, actually.
Yeah, probably that's a good amount, 5 to 7%. Because if people don't know, you and I do a podcast every week together, but it's always virtual.
Mm-hmm.
I'm nervous just because this is like I've been waiting to do in-person podcasts in my own studio for years. So it's exciting and a little nerve-wracking. We got
It's
lights
incredible.
all around us.
Lights, we got 3 cameras.
Yeah, mics. We got Mitch behind the cameras over there. It's an operation.
The studio's beautiful.
Thank you.
It looks really nice.
Made sure.
We got our props up here.
If you're not watching the video, you're just listening, we have these shelves behind us. And Mitch reminded us, he was like, hey, what are we putting on the shelves? Because it would look weird if they were just empty. So we just decided we would put some bananas, an apple, a dumbbell, and a 10-pound weight plate on there. So it looks ridiculous, but we're going to keep that as part of the joke until maybe this will be the background always.
I kind of like it.
It might just be the background always rather than coming up with something fancy. But
I kind of like it.
Dude.
Fruit and weights.
Fruit and weights. All right. So for everyone listening, Mike, you've been on the podcast before when we wrote a book. I think we did that when we were launching the book.
Mm-hmm.
Mike and I do a podcast every week for the How to Become a Personal Trainer podcast, which by the name, it's for people who want to become personal trainers. But we actually have a lot of people who aren't personal trainers who listen to that podcast.
Yeah, we do. We talk about a lot on there. It's not just how to become a personal trainer, but fitness stuff in general and non-fitness stuff that we just enjoy talking about.
Yeah, that was the deal when we came up. When did we start doing it? Was it 2019 that we started the podcast?
That sounds right. Yep.
The deal, because Mike doesn't do social media. He did. You did do social media for a long time. But then you were like, I'm tired of it. And we'll talk about that today, about our relationships with social media and all of that. But you're like, if I'm going to do this, I need to enjoy it.
Yeah.
It needs to be something that I don't dread. I don't not look forward to. And so every week we do a podcast. And we just shoot the shit.
Yeah.
And we just have fun with it. And so if you don't listen to that podcast already, we'll put the link to that in the show notes or in the description of the video.
And going on 6 years, it is still fun for me.
Yeah.
Which, we're doing something right.
Yeah, I think it's because I would say this: if we only talked about either fitness and or personal training, I think it would have gotten boring. Mm-hmm. But because we talk about so many other things, it's kept it fresh and more fun and exciting. Yeah. Especially as you and I have grown ourselves, because we change our mind on things, and it's been fun to have that.
We're getting to that today too.
We are. We're going to talk a lot about that. So I've got a list here for everyone watching. If I'm looking at my phone, I've got a list of things I want to talk about. First, Margot, who's actually in our fitness business mentorship, she asked a question in a question box. She said, how did you guys meet? So do you want to tell that story of how we met? Or you can give your side and then I can give mine if I have anything different.
Yeah, absolutely. So shout out Margot, who's awesome. Thank you for the question. The first time I came across Jordan was in 2012. I believe it was SEO. You think it was a guest post on Cressy's blog.
Yeah.
But I think it was and maybe it was SEO to Cressy's blog. I thought it was a guest post to your website.
Okay.
Or just a post on your website.
Yep.
That popped up, and that was my first exposure to you in the Eric Cressy, Tony G, beginning or early stage evidence-based fitness community.
Yep.
The next interaction I had with you after that was when I was consulting for Fitocracy in 2000 and late 2013 or maybe early 2014. We dug up the DMs at one point. But I messaged you on Twitter, where I think that's the one place I've been following you, Twitter and Fitocracy.
Oh, yeah.
and I was like, hey, man, I was trying to recruit you for the group coaching program that Fitocracy was launching, which was actually unbelievable.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest regrets.
They had like 1.5 or 2 million members.
Insane. That's insane.
And they were early in launching group coaching, where they would take I don't remember if it was 20%, and then the coach would take 80%. It was a nice split.
That's
I remember.
Just smart from a business perspective to give the coaches such a great split.
Yeah. And Dick Talons and I were working, and he was like, "Who do you think would be good?" I was like, "I'll message Jordan," and you were like, "Nah, man, I'm not interested." I was like, "Okay."
That was one of my. I think that's because people often ask like, "What's some of your biggest regrets?" That was looking back at the opportunities that could have allowed me. I think I said no too early to that one. I don't even know why I was so quick to say no on that.
You were doing, you were on like a cross-country trip at the time.
Oh.
I think it was just like, if I would have asked you a month later, I feel like you might have been more open to it.
To be fair and honest, I was also very much like, no one is going to do anything better than I'm going to do. Like that was I was in that grind mindset. I was 22. I think I was 22 at that time if I was on that cross-country trip.
Okay. Yep.
Maybe. Yeah, I think I was 22 because I graduated college and I wanted to
before your birthday in 2014.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wanted to prove to myself that I could work purely online. That's why I took the cross-country trip. So I brought my computer with me and I went from Boston to Chicago to, and it's all on a train. It wasn't like a plane trip because I didn't have that much money. I went from Boston to Chicago to Texas to Arizona to California to Denver back to Boston. That was like a month-long trip.
Wow. I didn't even realize the extent of that.
Yeah, it was all over the country.
All on train?
All on the train.
Wow.
So I was sleeping, and I didn't buy like a sleeping car. I was sleeping in a regular train chair.
Wait, you didn't get like hotels?
No, when I went to different places, I would meet with friends.
Okay.
And I would stay with them, but I was coaching people online. So I was like, I just want to prove to myself that I can actually do this.
Wow.
And it did. But I think at that point in time, I had that chip on my shoulder. No one's going to do this better than me. And so when you would ask that, I'm trying to put myself back in that situation. I must have been like, no, I don't want to work with or for anybody else type of a thing, realistically. But yeah. And then
the next time after that was in person in 2015.
Yes.
When I was coaching Gary.
Yep.
And we were...
Gary Vaynerchuk. Yep.
Yep. And we were in Boston.
Yep.
And I thought that you lived... or no, you were closer to Boston. He was actually speaking or doing something with the New England Patriots.
Yeah, yeah.
So we were at Gillette. I didn't know my geography of the Massachusetts area.
Yeah, yeah.
And we coordinated meeting up, and then I was at Gillette Stadium, and you were 45 minutes away. I was like, all right, I'll Uber there. And we got a coffee and hung out, and that was the first time we met in person.
Yep. Yeah, and then I remember, because I couldn't believe you Ubered 45 minutes to come and just hang out and get coffee. But then I remember at that point, you were coaching Gary, and I saw your videos that you were doing. And this is 2015, is that what it was?
Yeah.
I saw the videos because you had hired a videographer.
Shout out David Brissetti.
Yeah, David Brissetti, who then eventually I worked with because you worked with him.
After I stopped coaching Gary the first time. Yep.
And I couldn't believe how good your videos were. And I was like, dude, what in the hell? Like, how are you doing this?
Because you thought I was shooting and editing everything myself.
Yeah. And then I remember I tried to do that, and I tried to shoot my own video on like a crappy little camera and edit it on my Mac, and it just didn't look anything like it. And I remember texting, I was like, dude, how long does this take you? You're like, dude, I have someone do this for me. But it was also like, as a business owner, a big shift in mindset of being like, man, you have to delegate out at some point for some things. Like, I would have never delegated out coaching or someone writing programs or answering emails of my clients. But in terms of, if you want to reach more people and educate more people, and you also still want to be the best coach, you're going to have to delegate something in content creation in terms of helping you make better content. That was a big shift when I realized that you were hiring someone else to do that and paying them a full-time salary. Like,
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a great lesson from that. Another great lesson for like aspiring coaches and people who are up and coming in the industry is time spent with your peers is going to be beneficial.
Yep.
Like learning, you wouldn't have learned that had we not met and interacted and became friendly and then, ask questions back and forth.
Yeah.
Learning what other people are doing is, shortcut sounds like so sleazy and like, oh, it's a shortcut to building your business. But watching what other people are doing successfully and avoiding mistakes other people have made is a way to prevent making them yourself.
That's honestly one of the reasons why I've loved going to seminars, fitness seminars.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because of what you learn at the seminar in terms of what people are teaching you, even though that can be great. And there are some wonderful seminars, but who you meet, and especially like when I say younger, I don't mean in age. I mean younger in the fitness industry. Like you're newer to the industry. You meet people who are also often in that like new-ish coach, trying to improve themselves, trying to get their name out there, trying to learn. And when you develop that community of like-minded people who also are trying to come up in the industry together, regardless of age, regardless of whether you're 18 or 68, it's you're both trying to do the same thing in terms of educating yourself so you can better your clients and improve your business. That's like my favorite part of going to seminars.
Yeah, I'm with you.
What are some of your favorite memories of us together, if you can think of any off the top of your head?
Oh, man. So my mind goes to two places.
Okay.
One, so I coached Gary in person for 2 years from July 2014 to July 2016.
Yep.
You came in, I guess it was June 1st, 2016. So we had a 6-week overlap of like onboarding where I was around and
teaching me how to do it.
Yeah. How to do it and what he likes and dislikes and just, like getting you up to speed. When you have a high-end client like that who's paying you a full-time salary, you travel the world with him. Like, it wasn't just a one-day handoff.
Correct. One of the best things that I want to interrupt real quick. You're like, what he likes, what he doesn't like. The first thing I remember you teaching me was if you give him food, don't give it to him in like the plastic container that you buy it in. Like put it on a plate because he'll be more likely to eat it if it's plated.
Dude, I forgot that.
As opposed to like being in a container that you bought it in.
And he never even said that.
Yeah,
that was just from experience. Yeah. I was like, okay, this, Caesar salad with a little bit of dressing and double grilled chicken. When it's in the plastic thing, he doesn't touch it. But when it's in like a nice bowl with it,
yeah.
I completely
I remember that in the Vayner offices, you showing, because we had bought it. We had went out to buy him lunch. And then you're like, okay, here are the plates. And I was like, oh, we're going to put on a plate. Yeah, he won't eat it if it's not on a plate.
That's amazing. You remember that. Your memory, because we joke on our podcast about your memory. Your memory is actually really good on certain things.
Very weird, random things. I'll remember specific details.
Some random, but some like out of necessity. Or if it's just like a meaningless thing, maybe you like it's out of utility that you forget or remember certain things. But my mind goes to two things. One is the summer of 2016 and summer of 2018, we spent together for the most part out east at the summer house.
Gary's summer house.
Yep.
We don't own one.
Correct. And then also just being in the city and living, a few blocks away from each other and working all the time.
Yeah.
In kind of that same era, but then even after into 2019, 2020 even.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there was the time we had that night workout out east.
Oh, yeah.
Where we threw 135 on our back and walked for
a mile
or something like that. Yeah. And that's on a vlog somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many funny stories too. You were just telling your wife the story of us being sleep deprived because we're up late working and then we're down in the basement and there's the in-laws like and everyone's there. A bunch of kids come running downstairs. We were up till 3:00 in the morning. They come running downstairs at 7:15 on a Sunday morning and I shoot out of bed. I'm like, hey,
we're sleeping.
The kids stop and run right back upstairs. Like, that's where we had the idea for the mentorship was eating peach pie, I believe, at 2:00 in the morning in the kitchen.
Scribbling it on scrap pieces of paper. Yeah.
Just working. It's really like, because that's what we were always doing. I mean, we were training and we were hanging out and having fun, but for the most part, we were always, building our online fitness business.
We shared a very similar mission, I think. And we would talk about like the mission a lot. And I think one of the moments, if not the moment that I first felt very connected to you was we were in your apartment in New York and we were talking about stuff that we had done up to that point to like get to where we were and we would talk about how hard we worked and people didn't realize how hard we had worked to get there. And we both realized that we had both done one of the exact same things that probably very few people have ever done, in which when you start an email list nowadays, you have this option to do an automated email where when someone joins your email list, you get this automated option that like it just automatically sends out a welcome email. Mm-hmm. Back then, either they didn't have that option or we just didn't know about it. I don't remember which it was, but we would both, every time someone signed up for both of our email lists, and we didn't even know each other at the time, we would personally send them a welcome email to like write out an individual email to each individual person, and we would have conversations with them. And I thought up to that point that I was literally the only person that had done that. And then when we both dug up those emails showing that we had both done that, I was like, oh man, this guy is actually like a grinder. Like this guy has worked really hard. And that for me was like, oh man, I felt very connected to you at that point, because I was at a point in my life where I feel like people don't understand me, people don't get me, people don't understand what I'm doing or why I'm doing it. And for the first time in my life, I was like, oh, this guy gets it. Yeah.
I remember that exact moment. It was either 2017 or 2018, and we were going back to emails from 2013, and even before for you, I think 2012, where we were manually every single day writing hey, like, here's this guy that I promised. If you have any questions, if there's anything I can help you with, please let me know. Like, this is actually me, email. And I did that for years before. And I think there were plugins for it. They were.
There must have been, yeah.
But I remember I was actually at a fitness conference when someone saw what I was doing. I was like, what are you doing? Because that was at a point where I was, it's easier if you get a couple email signups a week. But when you're getting 10, 20, 30 a day on average and still doing that, it's like, there's a plugin for that on WordPress. I was like,
what's a plugin?
Yes.
Another one of my favorite memories, and it goes into the theme of we've both witnessed each other go through many stages in our life. But one of my favorite memories of I think you witnessing me do something was we were actually out east, and I was writing a post for my Instagram that to this day is one of my most popular posts. It was the post about my buddy David he didn't actually light his pubes on fire, but I said he did to my mom. And because we had been smoking weed in our room, and it's a long story. If people have been following a while, they know the story. It's the pube story. But it was the first time I wrote it, and I was so nervous to share it. I spent 3 hours writing this post, and we were at Panera Bread, and you watched me for 3 hours write this post. Mm-hmm. And I was so nervous because I was like, I'm a fitness guy. I'm going to tell this funny story. Are people going to be like, why are you sharing this? This is weird. It was one of the first times that I shared a more personal story that had literally nothing to do with fitness, and also had like real, like a deeper level of humor to it. And also like, why is he talking about pubes in this story? Uh-huh. I was so nervous to publish this. And finally I did, and it turned out to be one of my most popular posts, and I'll share it every now and then just to make people laugh. But having you watch me go through that was for me, it's a meaningful memory, having you, because I think there was a big shift, in that one post was a big shift in my mentality in regard to how I showed up, how I tried to be more truthful and honest and just be who I am regardless of what people may or may not think.
Yeah. That was hilarious. And man, I think you're right too, in terms of that being a moment where you incorporated more of yourself in your content specifically, and your humor and your comedy and your all of the things that you do now and have been doing for many years. Yeah. When you look back at 2013, 2014, 2015 videos, it's much more buttoned up. It's much more, hello, this is Sciat Fitness. Like, we're going to do an RDL today. Here's the exercise demonstration.
My name's Jordan Sciat. Welcome to SciatFitness.com.
Yes. Or the voicemail.
So speaking about that, what's your relationship with social media like? And obviously, like, I know so much of this answer, and I know people who listen to our podcast will know much of this answer, but maybe we could dive a little bit into it, because you used to share all the time on social media.
You're a great host, by the way. When we do a podcast, it's more...
You're the host.
Yeah, I do more of the planning, and you're the ESTP, and you just go with the flow of whatever the vibe of the day is. But you're like, I see the wheels turning. You keep us on track. You bring us back. You like,
thanks, man.
Yeah.
I'm trying
this, dude. First video podcast too. My relationship with social media.
Yeah.
We broke up. We're not in a relationship anymore. I am very grateful that the technology exists because it allowed me to stop doing work that I really didn't like in another lifetime 15 years ago and make my biggest passion something that I can do for a full-time job, right?
Coaching.
Yeah. And that was coaching in person initially, and then hybrid of coaching in person and online. And now it's primarily coaching online. And so when I take a step back and think about social media, I have to be grateful for it.
Yeah.
There became a point where I realized two things: that I don't want to be posting content, and fortunately, I don't need to be posting content. Mm-hmm. And so then I had to ask myself, why am I continuing to make content? And there's a part of me that probably still exists, although I don't know because I'm not really making content, but that really liked the accolades and the praise and the likes. I remember like really wrestling with how much I enjoyed positive feedback from strangers about anything, and how that I knew that couldn't be good for me. I didn't like that I liked it.
Yeah.
I wanted to not like it, but I did. And so that was something that I wrestled with. But yeah, really it became, fortunately I built enough of an audience to have a business that sustains the lifestyle that I want. And I was able to slowly, and I'm not totally removed, right? We have at Personal Trainer Podcast is our Instagram page where we put clips up from so we're both on there.
Yep.
And so that's what I would say my relationship is with social media. If I were to ever come back, it would probably be in a less stimulatory kind of social media platform. Mm-hmm. So like email list / YouTube is something I always really enjoyed. Longer form versus shorter form content. I enjoyed creating on that platform more. But yeah, at this point, I'm more relaxed and more at peace, and I'm probably, I guess, happier. Although I don't know about that. That's not the goal.
Yeah. More content.
Yeah, probably. I'm probably more content.
Less angry.
Definitely. Well, because anger is what anger and pain from things that happened to me in the past, I realized were one of the primary reasons I wanted the positive feedback. Like, I'm going to show you. You person who did this. Oh, you ex-girlfriend that did this. Oh, you like watch me.
Yeah.
And I realized, and I'm not judging when I say this, but it was an unhealthy way to approach life.
Yeah.
And so, I would love to get in a place where I make content now and again for the love of the game, because I want to create, because I want to help people, like that being the primary reason, without any of the getting caught up in the numbers and, just spending. We talk on our podcast all the time about how I don't enjoy spending time on my phone, but I'm addicted to consuming and go through like, all right, delete X. All right, X is back on my phone. Delete Instagram. I'm scrolling. I'm not scrolling, which I think is a problem. Well, I know is a problem that a lot of people can relate to because they've messaged me about it.
Yeah. And
then I think there are some people who are creators who have just immersed themselves in that like dopamine feedback loop, and it's actually good for their business. Like, it's working. They're growing their audience. They're helping more people. Their business is growing. They're accomplishing their goals. So is that bad? I don't think so for a lot of people.
I don't think, I think we could separate that, right? Like, it's not bad for their business, but is it bad for their mental well-being, their emotional well-being? It was a huge, like, that was another major shift there were many shifts in my life that came directly from you. One of them was when I heard you say, I don't like that I like this positive feedback that I'm getting on social media. Because that was a level of introspection and awareness of your own behavior and thoughts that I hadn't reached yet, where I was like, man, he doesn't like that. He likes that. Like it's sort of like, you know, how JP talks about sort of like looking at yourself from above. Mm-hmm. That was a level of looking at yourself and your own behavior and your own self-analysis that I hadn't come to yet. And then that was a real mind fuck for me. I was like, man, I love when I get positive feedback. That's crazy that he doesn't like it. And I was like, no, it's not that he doesn't like the feedback. He doesn't like that he likes it, which is you have to be very introspective at that point. And then I was like, fuck, why do I like it so much? That's not good.
Well, everyone
does. Like, of course, it's normal. But then for you to get to a point where you're like, you know what? I'm good enough with my business, with my life, where I don't need to keep doing things that are feeding this habit that I don't think is good for me. It's really incredible.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm not there yet. I'm not.
Yeah, but look, there are also, here's another difference. And this might be interesting for people like maybe seeing a bit of back end business stuff that they don't always get to see. I also didn't have a scalable business model. And so one-on-one coaching, every new client you take on, if you're doing it right, and you're really serving every client, is more time and more effort and more energy. And so if you're continuing to grow, you can only grow your one-on-one to a certain point.
Correct.
And I was at a point where I didn't want more one-on-one coaching clients.
Yeah.
And because I didn't have a scalable revenue stream, like a membership or even like group coaching is scalable to an extent, the business incentive for me to grow social media and get more attention and have more eyeballs and help more people and have more opportunity to sell wasn't there.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, do I want to start something like a membership? And I watched you start. I didn't watch you start it because you started it in 2015.
Yeah.
But I watched you grinding through, 2016, 2017, 2018. You were building it while coaching one-on-one, while traveling the world with Gary, like while making consistent content across platforms. And I was like, I don't know. But forget like, do I want to do that or not? Can I even do that? And yeah, so I didn't have the business incentive to continue creating either. And then you get to a place where you're like, all right, what are my money goals? How much money do I want to be making a year? Like I think about Bill Perkins' Die with Zero book now, where it's like thinking about a peak lifetime net worth and then allocating that net worth over your life to maximize experiences, rather than just using money as a scorecard for success or failure. Because, we've talked about this so many times, but you set a goal and then you hit that goal and then you set a new goal and then you hit that goal and then you set a new goal. And it becomes this constant chase, which again, I'm not trying to judge people who are in those positions, but for me at least, it overshooting your number and then realizing maybe you spent your life allocating your time not in the best way. I wouldn't want to have that regret.
That makes total sense. Yeah, I was just listening to a rabbi talk something about that, where he was saying so much of people's lives are spent, and he used the word waiting, which I think could be the right word. I'm not 100% sure. I literally just heard it this morning. He's like, so much of our lives are spent waiting. It's like waiting for, there's, the waiting for a friend to show up for coffee or whatever it is, but also like the waiting for when you want to achieve a goal. It's like, you spend a huge amount of time like in that process of waiting to hit that goal. But then once you hit that goal, you just move on to the next one and you keep on waiting and you keep on waiting. And it's almost this like idea of you're waiting to find happiness. You always feel like this next goal will finally bring you happiness. This next goal will finally bring you to a point where you're content or you're satisfied or you have more meaning, when it's like, so much of it is obviously the process and the journey of getting there. But at what point does continuing to move the goalposts take away from your life, right?
Yeah. Or completely agree. The journey is the destination. I think it's making sure the goalpost is the right goalpost, because there are so many goals besides money goals.
Right.
And the idea of balance versus imbalance in life versus, spending time with family versus working. Like there are so many things we can be doing with our time. It's making sure that I'm doing the things that I think are right.
Makes total sense.
And I've watched that in you over the years.
Yeah.
Shift, like, you know, you don't pull all-nighters anymore. You
No.
don't, like, you work hard. I'm not,
but not
trying
like
to be disparaging, but you also spend a lot of time with your daughters
Correct.
and your family. Like,
Yeah.
you know, there's and even your physical health, which I've heard you say that you don't regret putting on the back burner when you were unbelievably dedicated to building your business, but now you're probably in like a more wholesome, like better way of living.
Yeah. Definitely like more balanced would be the word, which we could discuss whether or not balance actually exists, but I would say it's more balanced. So, and it's interesting because it also, that money example of is the goalpost is that the right goal, also transitions to fitness so unbelievably well. Whereas you have all these people who are, for whatever reason, chasing a certain look or a certain number on the scale or a certain accolade in turn. I see it less with actual physical performance, but it does still exist. Like when I hit this number, everything will change. Even with me, I was like, when I hit my ultimate deadlift, I was like, that's all I need. Then I put the bar down after I did it after years and years and years. And I was like, that's it. Like, all right, I retire. I'm done now. I feel like, but I definitely see this with physique, where it's like people give up their entire life just to look a certain way or to have a certain number on the scale. They give up their entire life for it. It's like, is that really the goal that you want? Is that going to bring the most meaning to your life or the most joy to your life or anything, to your life, to your family's life, community's life? I feel like money and fitness go very well hand in hand with that.
Yeah, especially in that example. And you can look at it from two different types of potential client. There's the like world-class bodybuilder who dedicates his or her career to, you know, peak aesthetics at all costs, at the cost of health, to look a certain way on a specific day, to get the pictures and win the medal. And I think there is a lot of good in that. I mean, there's a lot of bad in that too, but there's also a lot of good in that. But then there's also the mom who has been 5 to 7 pounds away from her goal weight for 25 years and like feeling bad about her weight for 25 years, trying to lose those last 5 to 7, when even if and when she does hit it, she's going to realize like the same thing you realized when you had your 4X bodyweight deadlift. It's like, okay, I don't really feel different here.
Yeah. And actually, it might even be worse because you lose those 5 to 7 pounds. You have to be so much more restrictive once you get there. You have to be so much more restrictive. You can't eat as much. You're more tired. Like, it's your quality of life once you get there. Never mind, you're probably going to be like, well, I still want to lose more. Never mind that like the goalpost is now going to shift. But the quality of life there, which again, you could go back to money. Okay, so cool. So you earn this much money, but in order to continue earning that much money or making more, your quality of life has to go down so that you can continue to support the life that you now think that you need, and with all this money that you've gotten, whether it's now you have a higher mortgage, now you have higher this bill, higher that bill. It's like, cool. So now your quality of life is not any better even though you have more money. It's like your quality of life is not better even though you weigh less or you have a lower body fat percentage.
Yeah, it's a great example. So as income increases, expenses tend to balloon also for almost everyone. And then there's hedonic adaptation or lifestyle creep. Where your upgrade from your Honda to your BMW, your upgrade from your house so you have more room, like it just becomes the new normal. And even like there are expenses like that are valid and that do bring a lot of joy and happiness. I actually think like acreage is one of them. That's something that I would love in the future is, you know, a lot of land, but like a nice big yard. And to each their own. I find things like $2,000 sneakers or like a $400 t-shirt because it has a certain logo on it. Like that just seems
stupid.
Not a good use of all the hours that went into getting to that level.
Yeah. We're going to shift gears. What was your favorite / peak time in your own training or workouts? What did that look like? And when was it?
It was almost certainly in 2012 into 2013, because I had a lot of anger.
Anger-fueled workouts are great.
I had a lot of anger, and I was obsessed with lifting and nutrition. And I keep prefacing everything with we've talked about this because we've had so many good conversations. Exercise obviously isn't the exact same as talk therapy,
Correct.
right? Like sitting with a counselor, a psychologist, and cognitive behavior therapy.
It's a different type of therapy, though.
I think it's a different type of therapy.
And there's research supports that.
Yes. The positive effect that working out had on my mental health, especially during that era, like it was the thing that got me the most excited. It was also a place to sort through my thoughts. Like on a non-physiological level, I feel like it got bad stuff out of me. The pain and like the having something where you're tracking your progress over time and making continual progress, having that positive feedback loop. The training wasn't even amazing. I remember I was in Chicago at the time. I didn't have, I was just bleeding out my savings because I was setting up to launch my website. I had one in-person client at the time.
That was it, yeah.
And we would go to I didn't have a deal with the gym or anything. He'd pay me in cash. We'd go to LA Fitness and I'd train him. And, but yeah, that era was, I reflect back on as some of my most enjoyable, or not even enjoyable, my most beneficial workouts.
Just beneficial in terms of mental health and
Yeah.
Because
I was very lean.
Yeah.
And I was, I was actually making mistakes in terms of what I was doing, in that I was trying to stay too lean. So I was getting stronger, and maintaining a single digit body fat, but wasn't, I wanted to be adding muscle, but also psychologically didn't want to be adding any body fat.
Yeah.
So, but it was more the mental health benefits of that year.
That's interesting that at a time in which your training, looking back, wasn't the best, optimally, it was also still arguably the best training of your life because it added so much, which realistically, and I want to go off on this, that's part of what therapy does, is it makes other aspects of your life better. And I really have a strong disdain, as I know you do too, for the movement of saying exercise isn't therapy, therapy is therapy. Because it makes it appears as though there's only one type of therapy. When even within talk therapy, there are different types of therapy. There's different types of conversational styles, therapy styles. And if we actually look at the research comparing whether it's SSRIs or talk therapy or exercise or different types of therapy, we can see dramatic improvements in people's mental and emotional health, never mind the physical health, but from just exercise, even just from walking, never mind strength training or any of that stuff. So that's something I think is important to discuss, where it's why are we, it's actually really interesting. A lot of the people who say exercise isn't therapy, therapy is therapy, they're often the people who promote non-dogmatic views, not let's have a little bit more open-mindedness. But now they're presenting a very dogmatic view saying exercise isn't therapy, therapy is therapy. It's well, what if one person could use exercise as a form of therapy for them? And why are we demonizing that and making them feel bad for not doing the therapy that you like?
Yeah. That's a great point.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And I'm glad that the evidence is starting to
dramatically
change and back up the connection between physical health and mental health.
Yeah. I mean, dude, the differences that I've seen, not just with myself, but all of my inner circle members, I can't say all of them, many of my inner circle members, many of my one-on-one clients, as I'm sure you have as well, the difference in mental and emotional health with people who exercise regularly is unbelievable.
Yeah. Night and day.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the best thing you can be doing, I would argue.
Yeah.
Some kind of physical practice.
Yep.
especially in the modern era when we have so many knowledge workers. We don't work with our hands to the extent that we used to. We're not taking as many steps. We're not outside as much as we used to as a species.
Yeah.
And so carving out that time to get your cardio in and get your strength work in and get your movement in is very important.
What is your favorite type of exercise, like training?
We can talk about that, but what was your favorite time in terms of your training?
That's really tough because I've had so many distinct periods. But I'll probably say, looking back, my favorite time was probably with my powerlifting team in college. And I actually wanted to talk about having training partners because today we were working out in the gym and I was doing chin-ups. And on what I thought was my last rep, you just walked by and said, "Let's go, baby." And I was like, fuck it, I have to go for another rep. And I squeaked out another rep. And I think I said to you, I was like, I wouldn't have gotten that if you hadn't said, "Let's go, baby."
Yeah.
And it wasn't like you were standing there. You're just walking around doing your own thing. But when I went to college, it was around that same time frame where you had spoken to me about photocracy. It was a couple of years earlier. But when I went there, I hated the idea of training partners because at that point in my life, I was like, no one's going to work as hard as I work. And
Lone wolf.
Yeah, I want to be on my own, do my own thing. I was super angry. I was really angry and upset. And so I wanted to do my own thing. And so when I made the powerlifting team with my friends Nick Busan and Joe Retteni, we had just met in the gym, and I didn't expect it to be anything amazing. I didn't expect it to get into something that to become something that I really treasured and valued, which to this day, it's some of the most treasured memories of my life. But the intensity that those workouts had, realistically, have never been matched in my entire life, even when I was at Westside.
Wow.
Because when I was at Westside, I was the lowest man on the totem pole. I was an intern type thing. Mm-hmm. It wasn't as much camaraderie as it was like a competition and just like you're doing your own thing. Whereas on the team, you're part of you're all an equal part of this well-oiled machine. Mm-hmm. You're all loading and unloading each other's plates. You're all cheering each other on. You're all holding each other accountable. Oh my gosh, the amount of progress that I made with that team because of the team I've never experienced in my life. And this is when we train. This is the day. This is the time. You're here. That's what we do. And then you go out and then you eat afterwards and you get your post-workout. At that point in time, chocolate milk post-workout was like the thing. So we'd go to CVS and we'd get chocolate milk post-workout. And then once a week we'd go to the all-you-can-eat buffet, and they hated to see us coming because we were like the powerlifting team. It was some of the best times of my life, and it was the camaraderie that came with that. So even though I'm at a point now in my life where I'm not a power lifter and I don't power lift, and I still do some barbell work. It's funny. It was less about the actual training, which was really good, and more about the mental and emotional and community benefits that came from having that team there.
I love that answer.
Yeah.
I also like you giving some love to team sports.
Well, that's the interesting thing about powerlifting. It can be a team sport, but you're the only one on the platform.
Correct.
So you have a team behind you, which is wrestling as well, by the way. It's like you practice as a team, you show up as a team. I think even individual sports, they still have a team, but they don't compete as a team. Does that make sense? I'm more of an individual sport guy.
You are, and I know you are.
Yeah.
But I think that you outlined some of the benefits of team sports in what you just articulated there. And I can relate to a lot of that. And it sounds like a lot of fun. I'm with you in terms of training in that, in the last 12 to 15 years, I can count on, one hand the number of times I've trained with someone. Mm-hmm. But, and I've told you this, my wife's cousins three boys, like younger guys. I'm in my late 30s now, but these guys are, one of them's a senior in high school, one's in college, and one's out of college. So they're all kind of between that like 17 to 24 age range. And the last
super
couple
high tests, just
oh yeah, and all into fitness too, and lifting, like really into it. And so any family trip, there's been a couple over the last year and a half. Shout out Nikki, AJ, Joey. We've had insane work, like no caffeine, just like, hey Mike, we training? And I'm normally, I like my routine, ISTJ. I'm like, I wake up at this time, I get my pre-workout meal, I have my caffeine that I like, do I want a C4, do I want this? Yeah, exactly. Got my different types of pre-workout, and then I put my headphones in and I go train, and I don't talk to anyone. It's just like 4 p.m. at the hotel gym. They're like, we training, Mike? We training, Mike? I'm like, I guess we're training, boys. No music, no caffeine, no anything.
Yeah.
And one of the best workouts I'd had in a long time.
Yeah.
And so that, and I've had that with you. I remember that night in 2016, and there were some night workouts out east of like outside in the dark garage gym, but just pushing each other.
Yeah.
The osmosis and energy of your training partners can be incredible. Mm-hmm. Now, you can't rely on that. That can't be a crutch. It can't be, I don't have a good training partner, so I'm not going to go train today. Or you need a very reliable training partner if you're going to be training with a partner every single workout.
Yeah.
You need to develop the skill and habit of being independent and working out on your own. Mm-hmm. But if you're in a situation where even some of your workouts can be with a training partner, there's a lot of benefits.
I think I completely agree. I think that having a really good training partner is one of the best and worst things in the world, because if you don't have that training partner anymore, it's as though you've needed pre-workout and now all of a sudden you can't have pre-workout anymore. Where it's like, which by the way, like that's one of the reasons why I don't like people taking pre-workout all the time, because if you grow to rely on it, then you just expect that you're going to feel like going to the gym like every single time, super stimulated. It's like, no, most of the time you should probably go in the gym relatively relaxed, get a solid workout in, and occasionally hype yourself up if you need it. Mm-hmm. But when you go from having an amazing training partner to that person not being there anymore, or training partners, it can be really difficult. Mm-hmm. That's also why I think one of the many benefits, and there are many cons as we've spoken about so much on our own podcast, but it's one of the many benefits of the online world, where you can almost, maybe they're not there with you, but you can have a community to support you in some way, hold yourself accountable. It's one of my favorite things about the inner circle is you see people posting their personal records and like, hey, I was in the gym today, hit this, and they get excited to film these videos of their lift because they know they're going to get great feedback from their community members, from their online training partners.
Yeah.
Which is also what we see in the mentorship, where we have people who are there, like they've helped a client out in a way that they weren't able to do before, so they share that, or they finally made a piece of content that really hit home with people and they share that. It's nice to have that community feedback where you're all supporting each other. I think obviously being in person would be ideal, but if you can't have that, having the online community is great. Yeah,
well, and online gives you the whole world. You have access to all people, right? Yeah. And I was going to say all people who speak the same language as you, but now we're getting into a place with technology where, with online translators and literally anyone in the world.
Yeah.
And so you're not limited to just geography and the people in your community.
Yeah, or language, which is crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
Like the automatic translate buttons that, it's insane. Uh-huh. It's insane. There are even apps now where if you're in person with someone and like, they speak Chinese and you don't speak Chinese, you could speak English into it and it'll populate in Chinese, and then they'll speak Chinese into it and it'll populate in English.
Really cool.
It's crazy.
Great use of technology.
I almost did an impulse buy within the last couple months of, apparently there's like an earbud that is essentially like a hearing aid. It's not a hearing aid, but it's like a hearing, it looks like one, where you can put it in and then whatever language someone is talking, it will translate it into your ear.
Wow.
And I almost bought one. I was like, I have literally zero reason.
This is just
literally
so cool.
Zero reason.
Do you know how much it was?
A couple $100.
Yeah.
Which is like,
you're like
also
this
crazy.
Is sweet.
Yeah. Like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
But like, what am I going to
do that for a couple $100?
Dallas, Texas. Like what? Like, there's no reason for me.
Right.
If I was traveling to another country and I didn't know the language, that would be, actually, you know what? I think that would actually be a hindrance. If you're trying to learn the language, you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Because then you're just going to keep hearing your own language. But I think it's just the technology is wild.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I had a thought when you were talking about not taking pre-workout every workout.
Yeah.
Which I do. I take
every workout? No.
Every workout other than the 3 with a training partner that I've talked about. Like, basically every workout of the last.
All with stimulants, all of them?
Yeah. Not a lot.
A little bit, yeah. Because your caffeine intake is...
I keep my caffeine very reasonable. Like, I'll use like 1/4 of a scoop of pre-workout. But even just the placebo of the taste and the routine. But something that I've always wanted to do because I find it physiologically optimal, but then I don't because I'm a human and I just go with my impulses in the moment, is to rely on caffeine only when needed, like when I feel like I need it, and also only when in a fat loss phase. Like if I'm in even at maintenance, but really if I'm in a moderate surplus and I'm trying to build muscle, I shouldn't be using any pre-workout because I have plenty of glycogen. I'm hydrated. I'm ready to go. I don't have I just have food in my system that I can use for that training session.
Yeah.
And then when cutting, the caffeine hits even harder.
Yeah.
And like when those workouts that are really brutal come about, they don't feel as hard as they would have otherwise.
That makes sense. I should definitely clarify because the way you use pre-workout is very responsible. And like you are meticulous with your caffeine intake. I see a lot of people who will have 4 cups of coffee throughout the day, and then they'll go to work, do a workout, and then they'll have 300 milligrams of caffeine for their pre-workout. So now they're already up to like 500, 600 milligrams of caffeine on the day, and like who knows what else they're having. It's like I think when you're chronically overusing caffeine and then you're chronically drained and then you're also chronically relying on this extra caffeine well beyond any daily recommended dose, that's when I think they end up overdoing it and over relying on it. And I also think it's the same thing that I noticed with like geared powerlifting, which is like when you got to go to the gym, you got to have your belt, you've got to have your squat suit, you got to have your deadlift suit, you got to have your bench press shirt. It's like, I just want to go to the gym in a t-shirt and shorts and get a great lift in without needing all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you feel like you can't work out without this, that's a real handicap for you. Like, cause if you feel like the only way you're going to get a workout in is it's the worst it's a nocebo where it's like, you don't have this, it's going to be worse. It's like, maybe you need to adjust, and these are not you, but in general, people need to adjust their expectations of how they need to feel before they get a workout in. Maybe you could just feel relatively moderately tired and get a workout in and let the endorphins and everything pick you up over time rather than needing this quick, gotta beta alanine, get the itches, get like the, you know what I mean?
But it's hard when it's an option. Yeah, when it's in the pantry and you can have that. Oh, I'm tired. I didn't sleep great last night. I could do this workout not feeling good, and then maybe halfway or 3/4 of the way through, I start feeling better naturally, or I can feel better right now. We as humans want to feel better now.
Of course.
And that shows a lot of our decisions around anything dopaminergic, any cheap dopamine out there.
Correct.
I've never told this story anywhere. It's not even much of a story, but you jogged my memory. In 2012, I was living in Vancouver for a brief period of time.
You got to tell this.
We don't need to go into online poker got shut down in the U.S. and so I moved to Vancouver.
You're a professional poker player. Yeah.
No, not professional. I was making money playing online poker a little bit. I remember feeling something that was very foreign to me, which now in hindsight is anxiety from way too much caffeine. I would have a large Starbucks every morning, which was like 440 milligrams of caffeine. Yeah. And then I would have black? And then no, I loved my artificial sweeteners in there.
But no milk.
Just no milk.
Yeah,
no milk.
Okay.
But
Splenda or something.
Sweet and low and a sugar-free vanilla syrup in there.
Oh yeah.
And then I would have a scoop of 300 milligram pre-workout before my lift. And I find that caffeine hits me harder when I'm leaner. And I was I was single digit body fat at the time. Yeah. And during and after my workout, I was having like panicky feelings, like the world is ending type of feelings, like
you're going to die type stuff.
Yeah. And like couldn't control my emotions. And in hindsight, just I was consuming too much caffeine, which it took me, I don't know, 6 to 9 months.
Oh, you didn't realize it at the time?
No.
Oh.
No. Yeah.
Something's wrong.
Yeah. And like, I'm not telling anyone either. I'm just like all in here. But that led to me being sensitive about caffeine intake. One of the first articles, remember when back in the day when you'd launch a website, you had to have at least 5 blog posts on the site because that was like the general...
People had to have something to read when they went.
Exactly. And one of them was about the caffeine content of all these various products. Yeah, Crystal Light has this much, Diet Coke, Mountain Dew, and I had them memorized because I was dialing in my caffeine intake. So I was realizing
so much makes sense to me now about like how focused you are on caffeine and how you know how much caffeine is in so many different products.
Caffeine has a massive impact on my sleep, and my sleep has a massive impact on my mood and my immunity and my ability to stay on track with nutrition specifically. My sleep and my hunger are very intertwined. I think that's true for many people, but you know, look, I'm staying at your house. You just moved in here in the last 2 weeks, and you and your wife were kind enough, and you know me well enough that you don't even have blackout curtains on your window, but I have, they're like the kid ones, right?
I was like, we're putting these up in his room because he needs this.
And I have blackout curtains, which I appreciate so much. And I slept great last night. But I guess the reason why I have become someone who pays close attention to these things is because I feel the benefits of, room temp, darkness, quality sleep, not having too much caffeine, not having it too late in the day, et cetera.
You're one of the most in tune people with not just your body, but how certain things affect your body. It's been cool, but you're so data driven and like number driven. And so like you will look at, all right, what did I take? What did I have? How did that affect this? It's very cool to see how you analyze things so objectively in these inputs and outputs in your life and how much they impact you. Whereas I feel I'm more just like, let's just I'm sort of like guessing, right? Like I'm sort of like, let's just see what happens. And I have no idea. Whereas you're super focused and aware and objective with what's going on.
Yeah. Personality difference.
Yeah. Big personality. Do you have any favorite, and you've had so many clients over the years, but do you have, it doesn't have to be the one best one or one favorite one, but do you have one in mind that is among your favorite client success stories of yours with a client you've worked with?
Yeah, there's so many categories of success, right? So there's like emotional success story, need to lose weight to get pregnant because having trouble conceiving type of success story.
Yep.
There's, and I'm numbers driven, I guess, but there's lost a ton of weight, data driven. So needed to lose like over 200 pounds, data driven. And then maintaining that progress for way better long-term health outcomes, obviously. It's funny, something you said earlier in the podcast about fitness and therapy and how therapy should make the rest of your life better. And if your workouts are making the rest of your life better, then they're serving a great purpose beyond just making you physically healthier. I actually, and caveat, I'm not picking a favorite client. Like I just can't do.
Of course.
Yeah. Like there are many names coming to mind right now who I love. I'll talk about one person who I'm working with right now, who I've been working with for over 10 years. I think we just had like our 10-year.
That's awesome.
Maybe even going on 11 now at this point. Who is a guy who is one of the best examples of someone who uses the anchor of his fitness habits, his workouts, his regimented eating, and his his ability to set goals and then like stay pretty single-mindedly on those goals while not letting it take over his life. He's someone who has been able to grow in every other aspect of his life, I think largely as a result of his ability to sacrifice on the fitness side of things. So the skills that he's learned through changing his body, getting stronger, getting leaner, feeling better, getting way stronger actually, and then putting on quite a bit of muscle, has led to all of these, not in and of itself, but has led to his, he just became partner at
nice.
his firm at work,
That's
which is
awesome.
a huge deal.
Congrats if he's listening. That's amazing.
Yes. And he knows who he is. He's starting, like he's always, I think I've talked about him on our podcast about his baking side hustle. And how incredible, he's always sends my wife and I like desserts and all these things, which are delicious, but starting to create a business out of that. His ability to set personal development goals and stick with them, whether it's reading or, maybe part of me really admires it because I find a lot of these things difficult myself, right? Whereas I give in to scrolling versus like, I want to read this book, but that feels better. And I've made that error myself so many times to see him be like, no, I actually do the 30 minutes of reading boring tax literature because I know it's going to help me at work. Just watching him continue to grow year over year outside of fitness, but largely because of that rock that is fitness, has been really fun to play a small part in as his coach and also watch him accomplish.
Cool. That's amazing. And also to have going on 11 years of one-on-one coaching is incredible.
Yeah.
That's extraordinary. That's because you've seen so much of his growth and so many things change. And not even just, that's one of the things about coaching, especially, I think it's even more so with online coaching, is you usually end up learning more about the person and their life than often you do in-person coaching. With the in-person coaching, you got an hour tops a couple times a week. And it's, hey, we're here, let's get the workout in. Whereas with online coaching, you get updates about their life, what's going on. You get their thoughts. How are things going? Like that's part of being a good online coach, is asking about what else is going on. And you get these often very thoughtful, in-depth responses. So to see how his life has changed both from and not from fitness must be very, very cool.
Yeah, it is. How about you?
Yeah, very similar in terms of I can't just pick one ultimate favorite because there's so many, but this is sort of a cheat because this is like the most obvious one, but Susan is just, it's been an and it's also very selfish because I've benefited so much from her as well. But watching her growth from when we first started working together has been outrageous. And honestly, her strength and muscular growth and fat loss is the least impressive to me, even though it's outrageously impressive.
Even though it's very, very impressive. Elite.
Like, unbelievable. Yeah. Like people regularly ask her if she's on steroids.
Yeah.
Or not just ask, they accuse her of being on steroids. When we first started working together, well, first she asked, she reached out. I was living in Israel at the time and I got an email. She was like, hey, I'd like to work with you on powerlifting. And I was like, great. So we got on a phone call and we started working together. And I remember she wanted to work out like every day. She wanted to do something every single day. And she was very much like if I take a rest day, I'm going to lose my progress or I'm going to get fat, da-da-da-da-da. But she was willing to do whatever I said. So she wanted to do that, but she was willing to follow the program to the T. So I was like, listen, there's no reason to be working out every single day, but if you want to move, like we can do some extra movement, like so basically what essentially amounted to like some zone 2 cardio on your rest days. And it's funny going back, when we go back through her emails that she would send me, she was like very nervous. She was very anxious. She was like, are you sure? Like, this is all I can do? Like, I shouldn't be doing more. And to see that in 2015, I think it was 2014 or 2015 to now like 10 years later, where she's not only completely transformed her own body, and not only transformed her own mind and her own personality and her resilience and strength and grit, but also inspiring hundreds of thousands and millions of other people to do the same, writing her own book, having her own podcast, helping me like with the inner circle. She's an integral part of that. She hasn't just changed her life. She's also used her fitness and her knowledge and her strength and her courage and her wisdom to help so many others. So that for me, because what started as working with a retired teacher has now become one of the leading fitness industry experts for everybody, especially for people as they age. It's like her major passion is helping people as they get older.
Which is so important.
Yeah.
And some of that population can get into the mindset of, okay, 30-year-old guy with abs. Like it's easy for you to say, but then for Susan to have accomplished everything that she's accomplished,
Correct.
It's like, no, you can do this too.
Correct.
Yeah.
Like mid-60s, hip replacement. Dude, she started jiu-jitsu at like 61.
Incredible.
Insane.
Yeah.
And she's strong as fuck.
Yeah.
Like when I've rolled with her, dude, she'll grab my collar and I'll be like, what the fuck? I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, good luck to anybody who tries to fuck with this 63-year-old woman now. Like, good luck.
Yeah.
So
she's incredible.
Yeah, she's extraordinary. What do we got? It's a little over an hour. Should we wrap it up soon? Or?
I'm feeling good.
All right, let me see if there's anything else. Okay.
Up to you. It's your podcast.
Let's see. How about we'll do a couple more, and then we're filming, just to give the listeners a little bit of feedback. It's a big film day, so we got Mitch here. He's the best behind the camera over there. The main thing that we're filming today is a guide for our fitness business mentorship. We should talk about the fitness business mentorship, just like give people insight into what it is. Like, for whatever it's worth, it's for people who want to be personal trainers, or if you are already a personal trainer. It's not for. I'm not going to say. Let's say you want to own a baking store. A bakery is, I guess, the right term for it. A baking store. It could probably help realistically in terms of the business growth and strategy, but that's not who it's for. It's for coaches.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest, and you and I speak about this all the time, not even on the podcast or to the mentorship, but between you and me. I think my favorite part of it is that when you look at our mentorship versus what many of the other gurus and masterminds do, is the other people, not to talk shit on them, but I'm going to talk shit a little bit, is it's just about how to make more money. How do we optimize sales? And it's nothing about how to help your clients. It's nothing about the psychology and the emotional aspect of what your clients are going through and how you can communicate with them. It's nothing about how to write a better program or how to do better program design or understanding nutrition or... So every week in our mentorship, we do these live Q&As for the members. I would say at least 50%, if not upwards of 70 or 75% of the questions are about how they can better help their clients.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, that's
unheard of.
Yeah. And ironically, while all these other groups are focused on just making more money, if you just became a better coach and helped your current clients and potential future clients better, there's no better marketing than just being great at what you do.
Yeah, it's the best business strategy.
Yeah.
is having low retention by
high retention.
By having high retention.
You want low retention. That's
low churn. Churn was the word I was thinking, but retention came out of my mouth. Being a great coach and really caring about your clients and giving them time and attention and good programming and great communication, helping them make progress and letting them know that you care about them is going to lead to better business success than spending all of your time on the growth side.
Yeah.
Which is flashier and which a lot of people want. And back to earlier in this conversation, not necessarily because they even want the business success, but because they want the ego boost of followers and engagement. Would you rather have 2,000 Instagram followers and 25 one-on-one online coaching clients, or would you rather have a bigger audience and struggling to get clients? I love the mentorship.
Yeah,
it's you're absolutely right that we obviously focus on business and systems and growing social media because those things are all important. Yes. But it's honestly, it's probably something like 50 to 70% of course material and questions in our weekly Q&As that is focused on actual coaching and actually helping clients. Yeah. And more like 30-ish, 35, 40% on the business side of things. Yeah.
So if you want to look at, or even just start with the podcast, we have a whole podcast where we talk every week. So we'll put the link to that again in the show notes or in the description on YouTube or wherever you're watching. Today, well, we just spoke about how much of it is fitness focused and coaching focused. We are filming the updated version of the Instagram growth guide, which we initially made, I think it was 2018 or 2019?
19.
Instagram's changed so much. Like all of social media has changed so much. Yeah. But Instagram, I think I think all of social media has really changed because of TikTok. TikTok really was it drove the shift in terms of vertical video, quick cuts, like that real style, just go. It leads to so much more doom scrolling than we had back 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
Not only all of the things that you mentioned, but also the For You page, which prioritizes your interests over the people who you follow.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? Yeah. 10 years ago, you were seeing, your entire feed was people you follow.
Correct.
Now, the majority of most people's feeds are people they don't follow.
Yep. So we're filming that today. What I will say, and this is what we talk about this a fair amount, and you even spoke about having, like, would you rather have 2,000 followers and 25 clients or having 100,000 followers but struggling? Mm-hmm. And it obviously doesn't have to be either or. There could be some in between. But what I think many people don't realize is someone who has, quote unquote, only 2,000 followers, number one, they forget, like, you're talking about people here. Mm-hmm. These aren't just, people say the word follower as though it's like, it's dehumanizing almost. Like they don't think of them as a real human who has a real life, family, job behind that screen. And so any coach that's like, oh, I've only got 2,000 followers. I'm like, could you imagine standing in a room in front of, never mind 2,000 people, but 50 people? In front of 50 people and just giving a talk. Could you imagine? And they're like, immediately they're like, oh, that sounds really scary. It's like every time you get on to make a piece of content, you should think about your 2,000 followers or your 500 followers. You're standing up in a room and you have the opportunity to speak to them. And I mean, imagine if you have 500 followers, imagine if you have 50 clients, 50 one-on-one clients is an amazing business. It's a successful business. And if you're doing a good job, you will get referrals from those clients that will feed you and feed your family and feed your lifestyle. And you get the opportunity to help them. It's like people, even though we're filming the Instagram growth guide, what I think a lot of people they'll think it's just, well, how do we get more followers? It's not about getting more followers. It's about how do you help the people who currently follow you to then potentially maybe get more, but even more importantly, so that they get the opportunity and you get the opportunity to work together so that you can improve each other's lives. Yeah.
And just to put some numbers to that, 50 one-on-one coaching clients, we'll say $500 a month is the high end of the one-on-one coaching online. That 300 is maybe, at this point, might even
300. I think is the lower end.
Yeah. So 300
used to be 200, but that's very low now.
Yeah. So at $500 a month, 50 clients, that's $25,000 a month. You're talking $300,000 annual salary on a business that doesn't have expenses.
Correct.
It's not brick and mortar. Like, you have your website hosting fee, like your margins on an online personal training business are astronomical. And $300 a month on the lower end, that's $15,000 a month, $180,000 a year.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Like more than enough. Yeah. More like top 1% of the world.
Oh, dude. I think top 1% of the world might be like $40,000 a year.
Oh, really?
By the way.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Well,
we're talking about the whole world. Yeah. Let's talk about the whole world. Yeah. That's another thing. People, I made a post about this recently. We spoke about this on our podcast. I was livid because people, they're not grateful. for how good they have it, especially here in America. And like, there are people in America who are like actually suffering. Like, there are real people like homeless and all that. But if you like people on their smartphones, on their couch, in their air conditioned, heated homes with a pantry full of food, fridge full of food, water, job, and they, like, so oblivious to what actually like your life could be like and what so many people's lives are actually like. It's just infuriating.
Yeah. Yeah. They needed that. They needed that Science Fitness wake-up call. I didn't ask you back about your relationship with social media.
Oh, it's horrible. It's terrible.
Why?
Well, I spend too much time on it. That's for sure. Granted, a lot of it is creating. A lot of my time spent on it is creating. And if it's not creating, it's DMing and answering questions. So a lot of it is, it's productive and helpful. And that's like my goal. Whenever I open it, I'm like, okay, I need to make sure I'm going in and answering questions and helping the people who are reaching out. The issue is, as Gary says, if you like it, like if the highs get you too high and the lows will get you too low type thing. So I'm too affected by feedback. Now I will say I'm not affected by fitness feedback anymore. I don't care. If someone's like, you're an idiot, calories don't count, literally doesn't bother me. I just got a comment like that last night. Someone was like, you're fucking wrong. Calories don't determine weight loss. I'm like, whatever. Like, whereas it 10 years ago, that would have sent me through the fucking roof. I would have lost it. And I would have went to debate. And now it's more because I'm open to more discussing lifestyle things, politics, geopolitics, beliefs, morals, ethics, all of that, which I think inherently they foster more emotion to it because it's what you believe to be right and just, as opposed to what you believe is correct for building more muscle or losing fat. You know, there's different levels of what you really care about. So I get very impacted. My own emotional and mental well-being is very impacted by the messages I get, both positively and negatively. And I'm at a point where I haven't yet figured out how best to handle that. And it might just be a time and exposure thing to where eventually I'm just like, but I also don't want to get to that point. I don't want to get to a point where I'm dulled by opposing views and not even, it's not opposing views. It's the aggression and the anger and the vitriol with which they approach the conversations that really can get to me. And the seeming lack of empathy for people in a certain situation, it wrecks me. It's very difficult.
I'm trying to think if there's a world in which you get that feedback, feel those same feelings, but react differently.
Is there a way for you not to debate them? I mean, candidly, that's one of the reasons why I hope this podcast does well. Having these long form sit down conversations. And yes, I'll have fitness people, but also like you and I, we don't just talk about fitness at all. We talk about so many things that are meaningful to us outside of fitness. Yeah. And I want to bring people on this podcast from all walks of life where we have and people who disagree with me as well, where we can have meaningful conversations and both put our viewpoints out where we can discuss it. And I would like to eventually go like, I put the information out, people can take from it what they want, and then I can leave and not necessarily have to interact with it.
It's almost like then your debate is publicized. Yes. So instead of one-on-one, it's one-to-many. Yes. And it's in a, I don't know, it's in like a more thought, even if you're disagreeing with the person, it's a more thoughtful, like cordial conversation. Yes. Your guests are more vetted than a random anonymous person like throwing hate at you online. Yes. But then the conversation still exists for anyone who who's interested in the subject or wants to, but you don't have to repeat it. It's almost like a canned response with in an email. It's like, okay, or even the video drip sequence that we talked about. Correct. With the mentorship is, make the great piece of content once and then it exists there for anyone who wants it, rather than repeating yourself 1,000 times.
I think the other part of it is when you have these interactions, especially if you have a larger audience, you get exposed to some extreme views, to some people with really extreme views, and people who don't represent anywhere close
to that group,
to the vast majority of the population, to what most people think. But you'll be exposed to some people who believe some outrageously extreme things on both sides of the political spectrum, but even not just politics. And so when you, like, I could have a 45-minute debate with someone who's just completely radicalized and holds unbelievably deep-seated ideological beliefs that are not only false, but tremendously dangerous. And then I have that and I'm like, what's wrong with the world? And I was like, no, it's not the world.
Yeah.
That's not the world. That's just that person. Mm-hmm. So that is something I've been working through as well. But it's difficult. It's difficult when you invest a lot into a conversation. You're like, you are actually, like, this person is actually out of their fucking mind, whether it's wishing death on people or whatever it is. And it also, that does exist in the fitness industry too, where it's like, I've had people where when I talk about aspartame, they'll be like, can't wait for you to get cancer. I'm like, what? That's a crazy thing to say to someone you don't know. Like, that's insane. I can't wait for you to get cancer.
Yeah.
So, but that's like, even again, at that point, I don't really mind it. It's more about the real world stuff.
Yeah. And you make a great point, law of large numbers related.
Yeah.
You know what? Back in the day, Tim Ferriss did something around this, I don't know if it was a long form article. It probably was, but to the effect of, the larger a population gets, and he gives some examples, the higher likelihood there's going to be. He was talking about a psychopath being, you know, in a classroom of 25 kids, like, you might have one or two quote unquote bad kids, but then you expand that out to, you know, a neighborhood, and then you expand that out to a city. Like, the people on the fringe are very extreme or potentially dangerous. The point he was making was around fame and anonymity.
Interesting.
But here it's like, don't make the mistake of assuming that viewpoint is held by more people than it actually is.
Yeah.
Because that'll get you down in the dumps for sure.
Yeah, that'll wreck you.
Yeah.
So on that positive note, I want to do an outro, but I mean, we're not going to have, like, where do you want people to go? What do you want them to follow? What action do you want people to take after listening to this podcast?
I want people to leave Jordan a 5-star review on the Jordan Site mini podcast.
Thank you. I think I need to rebrand it so it's no longer mini.
I want them to do that. We have our podcast. It's called How to Become a Personal Trainer. Yeah. Apple, Spotify, YouTube. You can find it there if you enjoyed this. And I mean, I don't make content other than that these days. So
go to ontheregimen.com. Is that your website?
Yep.
Ontheregimen.com.
Yep.
Can apply for coaching even though you're not looking for new online coaching clients, but who knows?
Yeah.
Go there. And then what's the our Instagram page? At Personal Trainer Podcast?
At Personal Trainer Podcast. Jordan uploads daily.
Failing on that last couple of days. But yeah.
Not really. You might have had one day off.
Yeah.
You've been solid.
Yeah.
At Personal Trainer Podcast on Instagram.
Yep. Follow that. Listen to that podcast. If you enjoy my podcast, I think you're really going to enjoy that podcast because we have really fun talks. Yeah. More, I think, relevant to a lot of the stuff that you heard today. So anyway, dude, thank you for being the first guest on the In-Person podcast.
Thank you for having me as the first guest. And thank you, everyone, for listening. This was really fun conversation for me.
Likewise, man. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Have a wonderful week. Please leave a 5-star review. Talk to you soon.